Hi everyone, and welcome to the 5th session of NZX's Virtual Global Dairy Seminar 2020, as sponsored by StoneX, Interfood, and Global Dairy Trade. So apologies for the slight delay there. It's the inevitable when you're trying to get 5 people on a conference call. My name is Nick Morris, and I'm Head of Derivatives at the NZX. So in today's session, we're lucky enough to have an esteemed range of 5 guest panelists, moderated by Nick Vanderkolk, who is Commercial and Derivatives Manager at Interfood. So with us today, we have Teh-han Chow, who's the CEO of Greater China and Southeast Asia at NZMP or Fonterra. We have Michelle Huang, who's a Consumer Foods Analyst in Rabobank. Anson Bailey, Head of Technology, Media and Telecoms, Hong Kong, and Head of Consumer and Retail ASPAC at KPMG. Thankfully, that's the longest title I've got to read out today. And we've got Hunter McGregor, who's General Manager at Rata Food, who are a food import business based out of Shanghai. And we've got Ivor Liu as the General Manager of the Coffee Academics Group. Sorry, no, we don't. Yes, sorry, you are on, Ivor. Good. This session is on demand trends in Asian food services. During the COVID-19 pandemic, food service and the hospitality industry were severely impacted by lockdowns ceasing the operation of these businesses, whereas retail consumption surged as panic buying took hold. This panel will examine the comparisons of these two sectors and the impacts of demand for each across Asia. So before we start, if you haven't already, please make sure to download NZX's event app to take advantage of our networking features, as well as access to the Q&A and live polls. Recordings post the event and speaker and sponsor details. A link to the web version can be found in the chat box of the GoToWebinar now. Some important guidance on asking questions. If you're in the events app, click the live Q&A polls button, which will open a new screen. From there, click the Q&A tab at the top, which will allow you to write questions. So this is something that a few have had to find their way on, but hopefully that's clear enough. So if you have any questions for Nick, yeah, please submit these through the app. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible. Questions can also be voted up, so if there's a question you'd like to ask, make sure to get voting. Attendees have been muted, but this shouldn't impact you hearing us. If you're having trouble, please see the troubleshooting menu on the left of your screen. We'll also be sending out a recording of the webinar afterwards so you can rewatch anything that you miss. Also, throughout today's session, we'll be running some polls relating to today's topic. So today's poll is, will Oceania butter and anhydrous milk fat prices be higher or lower at the end of 2020? And the options are higher, lower, the same, or don't know. So we'll cover the results at the end of the session. To submit your responses, go into the live Q&A polls section again of the web or mobile app. I'll now pass on to Nick Vanderkolk to kick off today's session. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks to the NZX. Obviously, this year we're not in person in Singapore like we normally would be, which is unfortunate, but we do have a great setup, a virtual panel, I suppose, of people across Asia and the region for this topic today. For me, this is a fascinating topic. Personally, I don't work in the food service industry every day. However, as a dairy commodity person, trader, a buyer and seller of dairy ingredients, the food service industry has really had us guessing throughout the year, particularly around what is happening with those demand shifts. So I think we've got a great mix of people on the panel today, and our aim is to make sure that we get as much conversation going virtually as possible, whether you're watching this live around the world or later recording. Hopefully you get some benefit from it. As I said, please send through the questions through the app as well, so we'll do our best to answer those as time allows. I'm going to start with China, just because that is always the place to start with the situation we've had this year. And the first question's around the food service industry in China itself, and around how it is adapting for future growth. There's been examples or reports that the food delivery business in Asia has actually accelerated by 10 years in the last 6 months or so. And I would like to start with Michelle from Rabobank. If Michelle, you're online.
Yes. Yeah.
So Michelle, what do you think sort of the impact has been on the food service industry within China, and how does that industry look going forward in a post-pandemic world?
Okay, I think now China is nearly back to the normal.
Michelle? I think we've lost Michelle, unfortunately. Hunter, maybe I'll just go to you if that's all right, around what you're seeing on the ground from the food service trends and your thoughts on the year so far.
Sure. So yeah, from February, everything stopped. Everything was shut down. February, March was very, very quiet. Nothing happened. April, we started to see restaurants starting to reopen. By about May, things were starting to get back to normal. And when I say normal, it means there's very little social distancing rules at all, especially in Shanghai. And then by April, May, then June, July, August was fine. So the places that survived, that were managed to stay open, did really well. July and August is traditionally a time in China when food service doesn't do that well because it's the middle of summer, everyone goes traveling, overseas and things like that. But this year, everyone was staying in China. So, restaurants in Shanghai were doing their best trade ever in July and August because of this. And then you look at the hotel industry in China, there's sort of two parts to it. One of them is where the resorts are, like Sanya, Yunnan, on the coast, Qingdao, Xiamen, places like that are traditionally, tourist spots in China. They've been booming. They've been busy all the time. So Sanya, usually really quiet in the middle of summer, and their peak season is winter. They've been full. They've been full all the time because Chinese people still want to travel, still want to have a bit of time away from home, but they can't go outside of China. But then if you're a hotel that focuses on business travel in Shanghai or in the bigger cities, it's been really tough. So that's starting to do. So what they're doing is they have to discount prices on rooms, on food. So the food consumption in hotels in China has changed. That daily buffet with a lot of turnover of product and things like that is gone. They're going into a weekend buffet and they don't make any money on it anymore. So they're really scratching their head trying to work out how we're going to, we've got the restaurant there, how we're going to make money from it. But, generally things in China now, I would say are normal for everybody. There's no social distancing rules. There is a little bit of a problem that's happening in Qingdao at the moment with COVID-19. They're actually going to test 9 million people in 5 days. I think they've tested a third of that already. So, the systems are in place. There's a lot of confidence from the average Chinese consumer to go out and do stuff. But, spending's down in some areas. People have been hit with incomes. They're not as confident as they were before, but they're still spending money on the food, on going out to a restaurant.
Yeah,
so that's sort of.
Yeah, that sounds very positive, and I think one of the things that we've seen this year is that online food delivery. So those restaurants adapting to actually do online delivery. Teh-han, from your perspective in China with your food service customers, have you seen that shift, and do you think that's a sustainable shift going forward?
We've seen significant changes in that aspect. So if you look at, and one of our major customers is Pizza Hut, which is a part of Yum. And we've seen a lot of their business shift from in-store to online. So online has grown tremendously for them as a proportion of their business. I think for us, in terms of food service, it's a wide swath. So if you look at it from whether it's tea shops to bakeries, to convenience stores, etc. Each one kind of has returned at a different pace, if you will. So again, those that were probably less the dine-in type, less where you were probably concerned about transmissions, or those that were offering more takeaway services returned quicker. And those that obviously were perhaps seen as luxury or optional things to consume probably returned slower. So again, we could see where restaurants that were offering more basic meals or more substantive meals would return quicker than those that were perhaps in the indulgent categories. And we also saw across our tea shops, as an example, very quick, brisk return. So again, people perhaps looking for some sort of indulgence, but not willing to have high spend or being in an environment where they may get contagious type environment. So those types of outlets really boomed really quickly. So from our side of the business, we had our food service side had probably a down February. And March was probably fairly close to normal. And by April, we were normal.
Yeah, it's a very interesting shift, and I think we've seen it in Singapore as well. Michelle from Rabobank, I think you're back online.
Yes, Nick, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Thanks for rejoining. Michelle, we were just discussing the food service shifts. What is your view around the online food delivery within China on the food service? So this is restaurants now delivering to homes, etc. Is that shift being a full-time shift, do you think, or are we going to go back to traditional food service?
I think the virus actually triggered the further penetration of food delivery in overall food service, because during the lockdown time, people, they have been staying at home at that time, and all the restaurants is not operating. And even after the situation is getting better in April, this kind of habits has been formed. So what we have seen here is the share of food delivery in total food service is likely to further increase. The percentage in 2019 is around 14%, and we project a 20% this year. And also, this is likely to further increase to over 25% in 2022. Although we believe the food delivery will grow fast, but this does not signal the end of food dining in China. This is because, first of all, the dining in can provide experience and also social connection, which is very important to consumers in China. And this is not likely to be replaced by the food delivery. And secondly, some formats like QSRs or coffee shops, those kind of formats are more adaptable for food delivery or takeaway. But some Chinese restaurants, like the hot pot, consumers are more likely to choose eating. So we believe the process of online food delivery will accelerate in China, but this will not fully replace food dining in the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So the traditional model perhaps does rebound very, very quickly, as well as the online channel becoming very important. So very interesting. I'm going to go to Hong Kong, where we've got Anson and Ivor there together in the office. Anson, I'll start with you, and maybe Ivor you can follow. What do you think the most significant changes that we're seeing in consumer behaviour for retail shopping post COVID-19, and how are people buying in the sector differently today than perhaps they were before the start of the year?
Thanks, Nick, and hi everyone. Great to be with you from Hong Kong. I would say that COVID-19 has absolutely accelerated digital and everything online. We're certainly seeing that, Nick. And of course, we're living in this new normal right now. We're already out of wave 3 of COVID-19 here in Hong Kong. We're supposedly going into wave 4 of COVID-19 at some point. But I do think one of the things that we are seeing, Nick, and we've done some global survey papers recently, and the most recent paper we did was called Consumers in the New Reality. 70,000 consumers, so across 13 different locations around the world. And I think a key message for all of us, of course, is right now, of course, things like personal safety are very paramount to those consumers. Another area, of course, is things like health and wellness, Nick. And I think that is something where consumers are really looking very, very carefully at things like supply chains and more transparency of those food supply chains, for example, or non-food supply chains. And of course, they are also becoming increasingly digitally minded and tech savvy as well, Nick. So I think they're some of the key drivers that we're seeing. I think, as we just heard as well from Michelle, China, different story. And I think Hunter also made the comments about, China is a very special place in the fact that, they are now, we saw from last week from the Golden Week holidays, 637 million domestic trips. Quite unbelievable. So those Chinese consumers, Nick, I think are very resilient. We did see a dip, but I think we have seen kind of that V-shaped recovery in China, and obviously the less, we certainly, I don't think we'll see any V-shaped recoveries elsewhere around the globe. And Nick, just to kind of pick up on a couple of other things that I've noticed as well, of course, is the rising consumerism in ASEAN as well. We know that the Chinese consumers are right up there, but those ASEAN consumers, are moving upwards. 30% of them now are classed in that kind of middle class, area. So I do think that is something that we are going to see in terms of the growing consumerism, of course, in China, across ASEAN, but also those consumers, I think, and I was just having a chat with Ivor about this, those consumers are watching you very carefully. They are demanding more transparency on those supply chains as well, Nick.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that sharpen up, that focus on the supply chain, the resilience, and of course all of the things in between, hygiene standards, etc. I think were mentioned in your report as well. Now, Ivor, you're on the ground. You're running a coffee business, I think, in Hong Kong and perhaps other places as well. What have you seen in that consumer behaviour from a retail standpoint, and then also in regards to alternative milks, which I think are part of your portfolio?
Yeah, so consumer behavior has gradually shifted online. I think Hong Kong is one of those interesting places where I think consumers are still learning how to use all of these different digital platforms. But a lot of consumers are now purchasing things online in bulk as well. Social distancing policies are still quite relevant here in Hong Kong. We saw a dip in sales, in offline sales in August as well. Starting in July up till, say, the beginning of September, we were still heavily impacted by the coronavirus. So a lot of people have turned online, and we've seen online sales jump, doubling or tripling in sales. So that's really interesting to see. Most interesting was the fact that a lot of our core consumers, a lot of our loyal consumers have started to purchase large amounts of the same items online. So we have on our online shop, we have coffee beans, we have milk options, we also have cold brew, for example. Now these are our top selling items, and people would literally buy 30 to 50 items of these things in one go. So this is a really interesting trend. This has never happened before on our own platforms, not even in offline, unless it's a B2B kind of a business. But usually these are subscription based. But now we see a lot of consumers doing these bulk purchases as if they're trying to stock up on these on our coffee products, you know, in case in case there is a full shutdown or something. But so that's one interesting trend. Another trend is the food delivery services. We've seen an increase of about 20 to 30% in our online delivery sales, whereas with takeaways now take up about 40% of our sales. We see a lot of people. Interesting thing about coffee industry is that people are still really interested to sit at a coffee shop, even if they're on their own. They like to sit away on the laptops at the bar and just do the work there. But still, we've seen such a growth in takeaway and also on our delivery platforms. And we've done a lot of different types of marketing campaigns in order to drive these things. We have also developed our own digital platform, which is a web app as well, where people can essentially order pickup, order delivery, or they can go to our online shop straight from this web app, so that they can order straight on this platform. Just you know, we're shifting digital-wise. We're shifting towards not just relying on our offline sales, but also trying to find ways to expand on our online sales. So these are just some ways that we are expanding. And the third way that we're changing things is that we've seen a lot of consumers becoming more health conscious. People are shifting to plant-based options. So, for example, our alternative milk options like almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, they have seen an uptick in sales as well. A lot of people don't want to drink full cream. Either they're gluten intolerant, or they are vegan, or they're trying to lose weight. So a lot of the times we're trying to find ways to fine tune the recipes of our coffees in order to suit these alternative milks. So one interesting thing you might not know about alternative milk in the coffee industry is that they're really difficult to froth. It's very difficult to make a good cup of latte with soy milk, for example, because I've done it myself many times, failed many times before. It doesn't froth properly, so the latte art it disintegrates as soon as you try to do the latte art. So we need to fine tune the recipes. We need to make sure the presentation is on point, especially offline where people are already scarce to go out and be dining in. So we want to make sure that the service and the quality of the products is absolutely 100% deliverable every single time, just to make sure that people come again and again. We're actually opening our first plant-based tea concept. So all vegan food and tea shops. I think Mr. Chow, you said that your tea shops are doing really well. So we're jumping on the bandwagon with the tea shop, and we're trying to bring in alternative options, alternative dairy options, like different types of cheeses, vegan cheeses, for example, just to feed back to consumer demand. So these are really interesting times indeed, just shifting this juggernaut of a shift from how we've always done things to something very, very different in order to meet demands.
So you would say it's a permanent shift for your business, right? So now you've got the bricks and mortar stores, which were always there perhaps, and now you've got the online channel for delivering coffees, and then also you have this bulk delivery service as well. So it's really interesting. I think other parts of the world, particularly New Zealand, Australia, have had to adapt to that as well. Maybe generalising here, those cafes and restaurants in New Zealand and Australia, for example, weren't set up with the online channel ready to go. However, now you would say Asia was probably a little bit more advanced along the journey of having things in place. We'll step a little bit outside of China, if we like. Teh-han, you've got responsibility across other regions, Japan, Southeast Asia, Korea. What have you seen in these other markets in regards to that V-shaped recovery that we've seen in China comparatively in those other markets? Sorry, you're on mute, Teh-han.
Sorry, just to be clear, I guess in the past I had responsibility for much of the Asian market, but now my role is focused on Greater China. But again, we are seeing pockets of recovery, which is good. And so again, across the Asian marketplace, I think we still see very similar trends in terms of, again, those markets where delivery was set up or had the precursors of delivery have fared better than those that probably didn't. But generally, I think we're very still cautiously optimistic about the situation in most of our Southeast Asian markets.
Okay, very good, thank you. Hunter, to you, around I suppose the online formats perhaps that you're seeing. So your food service customers, your restaurant customers, how do you think sort of the influencer live streams, the video, the marketing is changing the industry in China particularly? Are you seeing some more shifts there at the moment?
Well, China's well ahead of everybody else with regards to online ecosystems. Yeah, you can just take for food service, for example, there's Dianping, which is a restaurant review service, which is morphed into you can buy food through it. It does delivery. It's got everything. So, the real challenge for restaurants that operate with online and offline and all that sort of stuff is the cost. So if you're going to deliver some food in China, let's say it's a 50 renminbi bowl of noodles, which the people wouldn't pay that. They usually pay 30 renminbi, but you can't add a delivery fee to it. So there's 20 or 30% taken off the top. So the margins on the delivery. So when we look at restaurants trying to work out how to get delivery, it's very difficult for them to actually make any money from it. So it's a real challenge. The demand from the consumer side is massive. It's going to grow. It's not going anywhere. So how do restaurants actually make money from it? A lot of them are trying to develop special menus for it, but the numbers never really stack up, because a consumer in China is very happy to pay 30, 40, 50 renminbi for a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, but when it's a bowl of noodles or something like that, they prefer to pay 30 or 20 renminbi. They're not going to pay 60 renminbi for a bowl of noodles. So the margins are really squeezed. So it's a really big challenge, because the demand on the delivery side's there, but how do restaurants actually make it work? The only really way to make it work at the moment is to cut corners. In the little hole in the wall down the road that's doing noodles, and it's got a different hygiene standard to most restaurants. They're the ones that can make money. So it's a really big challenge, but it's massive. The platforms are in place. You got Ulama, Meituan, you got Dianping, all these big things. Everything is there, but it's how do these restaurants actually make money from it, which is a major challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the model changes perhaps in reducing their lease costs or reducing the size of their footprint as a restaurant to adapt. And Anson, back to you. You did already mention supply chains and I suppose traceability. And Eva sitting next to you mentioned alternative milks, right? So how would you compare the traceability of the supply chains between, say, a New Zealand dairy product, whether it be a fresh milk flown to Hong Kong, versus an alternative milk product?
Thanks, Nick. Just before I answer that, I also kind of wanted to echo what Hunter mentioned. I think two observations I have. We keep hearing about this new normal. A lot of my global colleagues keep talking about this new normal. In China, it's just normal. and I think that's the reality, right? We're seeing different speeds, and China is at a very different speed, I think, to the rest of the world, Nick. So that's certainly my first observation. Is please remember, we talk about this new normal, we talk about the impacts of COVID-19, but in China, as I said, the new normal is normal. Going back to what Hunter mentioned as well, those food delivery businesses, there's some huge margins. And this is the issue, because I have, I have a lot of friends, relatives equally in the F&B side of business. And they're telling me that they are really struggling because they've got to factor in, as Hunter mentioned, that 20-30% delivery cost on top of those food charges. So that, I think, is a big challenge for F&B, Nick. But also one of the trends that I'm seeing is the growing number of central kitchens. And that is something that I'm seeing more and more. And I have a number of clients who are calling me saying, Anson, we're looking at M&A opportunities in that space. Let us know, because of course, what a number of these players are trying to do is to mitigate all of those costs. They're looking at having these centralized kitchens that will help them with regards to the takeaway and the food delivery side of things as well, Nick. Now, going back to your point about traceability, I do think that now, and this is interesting because this is where we're now living in this more digital world. There are some really cool tech and what we call startup companies. We're seeing a lot of these startup companies looking at tech and innovation, looking at how they can help to develop these POCs, these proof of concepts, with regards to supply chain visibility. And we are also seeing a number of these companies that they can be seen to be disruptors of the supply chain, but actually they're providing, I think, a very valuable service. And we are seeing a number of these companies that are racing upwards because they are now employing that tech. They are employing the AI into those supply chains to help drive compliance and to work with some of those bigger players as well, Nick, out of necessity, because those consumers, going back to my earlier comments, Nick, they are increasingly digitally minded and tech savvy. They are demanding to know about those supply chains, and they are demanding that transparency. Now, it's not there yet, and it's still going to take us at least maybe another 12-18 months. I have been hearing and seeing some companies make claims that they've already fixed the supply chain. I don't think that's necessarily so. But as I said, there are some really interesting startup players that we are working with, and more importantly, they're working with a number of those bigger companies to drive these proof of concepts to help really look at that vexing question of ensuring that we have much better transparency in those supply chains. Because as we know, Nick, there are different companies doing different things, and with those cost pressures, there's always the possibility that companies will cut corners.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, the bottom line is the consumer, right? The consumer demand. They want those systems in place, and they want that traceability. So, Ivor, you think the same thing?
Consumers, Nick. Listen to the consumers. Follow those consumers. Sorry, Ivor, I think you also wanted to say something.
Yeah, because I wanted to share an interesting story that happened a few weeks ago. Mandarin Oriental approached us to purchase some of our coffee beans, and one of their requirements was proof of POC.
POC, yeah.
Yeah. One of their main requirements was that we needed to show proof of where our coffee beans were supplied from, and thankfully, we direct trade with our coffee farmers, right? But we're still scrambling, to get all of the letters and all of the correspondence with so-and-so farmer from Ethiopia or from Panama, just to get all of these certifications done and compile it together and show our clients, hey, here's all of the documentation, just like a stack full of everything from ISOs and letters and certifications of the charities that they support, and so on, just an entire stack. And it was just like, okay, so B2B clients in particular, they are extremely stringent about their requirements of where the products come from, especially coffee products. With regards to the supplies, I think it really brings back to the owners, to our suppliers as well, to provide a lot of transparency, you know, ISO certifications of where their products are from, you know, where the milk products are from, even our kombucha, for example. A lot of our products are locally produced as well. We support these aquaponic salads from new territories, for example. So, you know, all of these things, it requires a lot of certifications, and it's not just about purchasing. It's not just about the transaction anymore. Every single time we engage a new supplier, I have to ask them for certifications, say fair trade certifications, or any kinds of proof to demonstrate that they are who they say they are. And this is normal now. Actually, this is a norm, because clients are actively asking us for these proofs already. So this is just.
Do you think either that was already in place before COVID, or is that a post-COVID change?
So we've seen an increase in the demand. It was there before, especially, say, you know, fair trade. It's always been you know, talked about. It's always been you know, deemed as very good. And now we're trying to tell people that, hey, it's not about fair trade, it's also about direct trade, or local supplies, so on. So people are asking more questions post-COVID. I think they're more concerned about their health and where the products are from. I think they're concerned about you know, if it's imported from XYZ country, whether XYZ country is you know, maybe heavily hit by COVID, and they're concerned maybe if they're heavily hit by COVID, do they have a hygiene issue? So that's one interesting thing that we've noticed from our consumers, like mainly B2B at the moment. We do have customers, we call street customers, who would email us and ask these questions, but usually they want to bulk purchase things for their offices, or for you know, an event or something. So this is interesting.
Yeah, no, it's very good comments. Teh-han, in terms of traceability, and obviously New Zealand dairy in China is obviously the leader, is the most demanded dairy origin, I would say. Obviously, New Zealand's been seen as in a pretty good light in the COVID handling. What are you seeing in China around food service traceability demands for dairy in particular?
I think we continue to see, again, it's probably, as you described, a trend that was starting pre-COVID, and then with COVID, it has continued. I guess there has also been concerns of how food might be affected by COVID. And so there has been some, I guess, scares that have come out of that one as well. But again, you know, we are sitting in a pretty good space with very strong traceability, you know, across all of our products. And you know, probably the one we hold up as an example is our Anmum infant formula, where there's a QR code at the bottom. A consumer can scan the QR code and they can find out which farm the milk actually came from. So it's full supply chain traceability is something that we try very hard to make sure that that is a consumer proposition that we offer.
Do you think there's a difference in that demand between, say, an Anmum customer, which might be a mother or you know, type scenario, versus a cheese on a pizza? Is there a difference in the traceability demand?
I think there would be. I think in the sense that obviously, you know, the product that a consumer takes out of food service is probably a combination of different ingredients from you know, different manufacturers in different parts of the world. So you can't then discern exactly, but I think that we have seen where, you know, again, we have used our anchor branding for products, and that has been very well received by the consumer because they feel that that implies, again, quality and food safety security.
Very interesting. Michelle, are you online there?
Yes, Nick. Actually, in terms of this traceability, in addition to what all the panelists mentioned, I want to share some story from a retailer side, especially those e-commerce high-tech companies. we do observe there is a strong push of having the traceability from the retailer side in China. Those retailers, for example, especially those from e-commerce background, they started to build up a number of villages dedicated to producing agricultural products to serve consumers in China. And this kind of agricultural products is directly serving their own outlets. So, for example, their digital production base, they can bring in high-tech farming facilities like drone planting and the data sensor. And also at the retail end, they will have some high-tech barcode, which consumers, they can directly observe where the product is from and what kind of processes they have been undergoing before going to consumers' table. So I think moving forward, in addition to consumers' demand on the traceability side demand, we will see increasing effort from retailer and also working together with suppliers in China to enhance this kind of traceability issue.
Very interesting. So yeah, you're definitely seeing that investment go back into the focus. As you said, Anson, the customer is the focus, and the customer's always right. So that seems to be the point there. Michelle, I'll stay with you because I think just under a month's time we have Singles Day coming up, which for people that don't know is a huge, gigantic shopping day in China, the 11th of November. Michelle, what are your predictions or expectations for some of the shopping holidays, in particular Singles Day coming up?
Oh, it's not easy to predict the final results for the Singles Day, especially under COVID situation. But I think if we look at the 2019 number Singles Day, according to the statistics released by Alibaba, the total gross merchandise value has already reached 38 billion on Singles Day. And also its rival like JD, they reported a total of GMV of 29 billion for the event. I think in China's situation, it's likely this year around the 20 to 30% growth of last year's number is likely to be seen in this year's Singles Day. That will amount to 45 to 50 billion US dollar for Alibaba, Tmall, and Taobao, and also close 35 to 40 billion US dollar from JD. So that's our view towards the Singles Day. And also what's different from last year, I think for this year, what we have discussed like the live broadcasting, this kind of for the online merchants, the live streaming has become an important tool, not only to offset the decline in the offline business, but also to encourage creativity in marketing and also developing the customer relationships. So we believe in this year, there will be acceleration of content-based apps to generate consumption through those kind of entertaining content in this year's Singles Day.
Very interesting. Anson, do you agree with the comments around Singles Day might be the biggest yet ever?
Yeah, Nick, I was going to say Michelle's very positive there, isn't she? I would say I'd echo that positive sentiment as well, Nick. Interestingly enough, I was just talking to our global team last night, and we were debating. Of course, we've got the we've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We've got a number of these big online shopping festivals in the likes of the US. I always like to remind my American colleagues that their online shopping festival is not the biggest or the best, Nick. And when we look at Singles Day, it blows blows those other online holidays just out of the window. I agree with Michelle. I think there's a couple of things that I would say that are interesting for all of us. Is that in China, of course, we just saw the Golden Week holiday numbers, quite incredible. I think I mentioned right at the beginning, 637 million domestic trips being made in those 8 days, Nick. On average, I think we saw an uptick in about 5%, 4.9%. But don't forget, a lot of those Chinese consumers, Nick, are also, they're not traveling. Normally they'd be traveling overseas. As Hunter mentioned, in the summer season, in those summer months in China, a lot of people do travel. My view is that there is quite a lot of pent-up demand. We never really had a proper Chinese New Year, did we, Michelle? Because COVID-19 hit us. And that's usually a very big spending period as well. So I actually think there is quite a lot of pent-up demand over there, Nick. So I would give my thumbs up to Michelle. I think we are going to see about a 20% hike in those numbers on Singles Day. And again, $38 billion. I mean, that is it's just a very significant festival. So yeah, I do think we're going to see that. And there's a couple of other things that I was going to say as well. Is it in the old days, Singles Day was predominantly Chinese consumers. We're now seeing more consumers get involved, right? Because everybody likes a deal, right? Everybody likes that getting something for a discount. So I do think we are going to see greater appeal to these online festivals. And again, it's going to be very interesting. November the 11th, everybody, check out those numbers. Michelle said 20, 30%. I'm there, maybe around that 20% marker. But whatever happens, it's going to be very big. Sorry, Nick, one other point I also want to come back to, because I think Teh-han was talking about it as well. And I think a key message for all of us is those consumers, just going back to those consumers again, they are really focused on that greater transparency, but they're looking at you. They're looking at all those brands. They're looking at Fonterra, they're looking at everyone, and they're asking the questions around purpose. So definitely one of the things that we hear a lot more about is, what is your purpose? What are those brands doing? How are they contributing to society? How are they supporting the communities they live and work in? In the old days, everybody talked about CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility. In reality, Nick, I've been watching a lot of the corporates over the years. There was a lot of lip service being paid. We've got a really nice shiny CSR report, blah, blah, blah. The reality is now you have got to walk the talk. You have absolutely got to demonstrate your purpose. And I think that's really important, because those younger consumers now, I think, are perhaps a little bit more, let's say, activists. They are more activists. And we're seeing even in the stakeholders as well, Nick, those stakeholders themselves are becoming they are also activists. They're asking the questions. What are you doing about it? Equally, ESG, right? That environmental, the environmental side of things, sustainable governance, they are now really hot topics that companies simply cannot avoid, or you avoid it at your own peril.
Very, very clear. And I think, that comes back to what we were saying earlier around customer demand. It's very, very clear that is the main story. One of the pitfalls of having 5 brilliant panelists is we run out of time, but we do have a few questions coming through for the group. So I will just run through a couple that I've got in front of me here. This is an interesting one, and Teh-han, I might come back to you on this. We've heard, I suppose, in the dairy world and the dairy channels that the Chinese government has been promoting dairy consumption or dairy nutrition being a good health benefit, probably always has been, but maybe more accelerated. Do you think that promotion will sustain in a post-COVID world?
Yes, I think that promotion will sustain. I think that there is a more attention to health and wellness, as well as topics around immunity. So I think that the government's promotion of dairy has really been helpful for the dairy industry. So we do see an uplift from that, and I think that we will continue to see the benefits of customer awareness of those nutritional values and functional benefits of dairy and dairy products.
And staying on the China story, Teh-han, have you seen anything in dairy food service that you've seen unexpectedly, things that have really surprised you in the market this year?
Well, I think again, a lot of things that COVID brought on were changes or acceleration of changes in consumer behaviors. So again, perhaps some of the things you saw before that were happening, but I think that again, the digitization, as an example, and online shopping behaviors has really accelerated. So some of those things probably weren't, they were there before, but again, they weren't, you weren't expecting it to change so quickly. So with COVID, some of those have changed. And again, the trends around health and wellness, immunity, people are now becoming more aware of, probiotics and other sorts of health products that are all, and dairy-related health products. I think that's been one of the areas where we've seen that become more conscious by the consumer as well.
Hunter, have you seen the same thing from a sort of your business perspective on health and wellness?
Oh, there's been a long-term trend for health and wellness, but also the trend is about value for money. So you've got to provide a good product that fits the consumer needs. But just being from New Zealand is not enough anymore, or being a foreign product. You need to, sort of go beyond that and go a bit deeper into what the consumer actually needs. Is it a safe product? Okay, you got to have the safe supply chain. Is it a product that fits their, the infant formula is very sensitive. Does it fit their child's needs? So yeah, it's been a long-term trend, and COVID has speed things up. But it's something that I think New Zealand companies are in a good position for.
Yeah. To Hong Kong, to Anson and Ivor, we've got a question around whether the online and delivery of the food service channels created any new products. This is in relation to dairy, but if it's not dairy, have you seen any new products evolve as a result of that online delivery channel?
Yeah, so we've definitely seen these, as mentioned previously, that we are always fine-tuning new recipes. We're always trying to find new ways of presenting these our coffee products to merge with the new trend for alternative milk products. But of course, we're always fine-tuning anyway, even for our dairy products, like our full cream and also our skimmed. So what we do is we're actually changing our new menu at the moment. Really exciting times. So on top of our existing classics, which is the lattes and fine-tuning the recipes for soy lattes and almond lattes, but we're also creating new and innovative coffee offerings. It may involve some the steamer, the froth steamer. It may involve different types of cold syrups, just to merge with the alternative milks to provide a new experience. But all of these things, we're trying to elevate our offline experience as much as we can. Meanwhile, online stores and also FMCG products that we aim to provide at supermarkets, we are actually launching these cartons, coffee cartons and milk cartons, milk coffee cartons, and that way, we're trying to basically cover all our bases, and ensuring that we are able to deliver what the consumer wants wherever we are, whether it be supermarkets, whether it be online shop, or in our shops ourselves. So these are really exciting times to grow our product list, to grow our merchandise list, and also just to explore new ways of presenting different types of products, whether it be dairy based or non-dairy based, or simply just coffee beans.
Yeah, very interesting. And Anson, final question we have in Q&A is around that supply chain providence discussion, and the question's around blockchain. So do you see blockchain playing a role from a technology perspective?
Nick, absolutely, 110%, I'd say. Yeah, we are seeing blockchain now, really become a major factor. As I said, tech and innovation is it is a key driver, and we are going to see more and more of this tech and innovation. And it's interesting, even at KPMG these days, we used to be a very boring old accounting firm. No more, because of course we have all of these new teams around, developing and innovating the use of blockchain. So we have teams that are very focused on providing those blockchain solutions. We have our own platform called Unify. So it's really interesting that, and this is being driven by our customers. It really is being driven. Now, obviously, we're not B2C, we're B2B, but you've got to listen to your customers. And I do think, Nick, one of the things that we have seen, as I said right at the beginning, COVID-19 has accelerated this digital, or we're going to see more of a digital supply chain moving forward. And absolutely, without a doubt, with those new technologies like blockchain and AI, those algorithms for machine learning, we're going to see a far greater focus in 2021 and beyond.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And to all the panelists, thank you for your time. We are out of time, unfortunately, but we've got a great group of people. I think I'm handing back to Nick Morris or Jess in Auckland.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So just to go straight into what's up next, in 3 hours, I think it is, we have another session with yours truly doing a short update, followed by Asia's rebound, China and Southeast Asia macroeconomic update from Capital Economics, and then a great range of panels and presentations tomorrow. I just want to say thank you again for all the panelists and the moderator, Nick. Great job and really interesting insights, and thank you for giving your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.